morning. I'm a doctor. 35 years ago, I started medical school. In that time, I've trained or practiced rural and community medicine in Nevada, internal medicine and medical oncology at UC San Francisco, global health living in Uganda, community practice oncology in Kentucky, big pharma, and biotechnology. So I have seen it all and experienced it all as a doctor. Today, I want to talk some more about being a doctor, but specifically about how healthcare consumers can make being a doctor a better job. To do that, I want to tell two stories, and then, frankly, with great humility, given the crowd and the doctors who I work with every day, make some suggestions. So, I'm chancellor today, and we have a wonderful leading medical school at UCSF. I don't pick the medical students. But Dean Hawgood, our dean of our medical school, asked me to participate in selection of our new vice dean for education, Catherine Lucy. And I was really excited about this, as maybe all of you would have been. Just picture yourself interviewing someone, and you get to make a list what I want in future doctors. Pretty cool, pretty good. So I started, of course, with intellect. I want somebody really smart. But don't leave out the EQ while you get the IQ. I want empathy, a good bedside manner. They need to be team-oriented. This is collaboration. They need excellent analytical skills, need to know some statistics. I want them to not just understand biology, but in today's world, system biology, a good sense of social justice, care for the underserved, and the ability, because everything's going to change anyway, to be a lifelong learner. Well, Catherine started to look a little pale at one point during this conversation as I rambled on and on about what I wanted in future doctors. And I realized, as someone brought up Catholic, I could have summarized for her. In fact, what I was talking about was probably what we all want. I realized I had left off walk on water. So look, kidding aside, we all do want a lot from our doctors. And I hear people bragging at cocktail parties, and I've been there. No, I have the best doctor. He or she is terrific. We all want great doctors. I don't think anybody in this audience would argue with that. But here's the thing. Today, doctors are under more pressure and stress than ever before. Even at this conference, terrific people are saying, we need doctors to do more of this. They're so stubborn, they're so this, they're so that. We are stressing out the very people we need the most from. Almost half of doctors surveyed today exhibit at least one symptom of burnout, and that's particularly true for areas of great need like family medicine, internal medicine, docs on the front lines. Our collective best interest is for these folks to enjoy their work and be fulfilled and satisfied by their work. So what to do? So that brings me to my second story. My second story is about myself and some lessons I learned. So you heard I was at Genentech, and I had the distinct pleasure of working with a great team on a new breast cancer drug, Herceptin. You might imagine in the mid-90s we were heroes. Patients would love us. They'd come and say, oh, you're geniuses. You're going to change breast cancer forever. Far the opposite. We were struggling to enroll the clinical trial. We didn't have enough drug supply for compassionate use expanded access. And turns out the patient advocates were mad. They picketed Genentech. They chained themselves to the fence. They were angry at the slow pace of innovation, and they didn't like our trial. Well, my first reaction was fear, and my second reaction was, holy cow, I have no time for this. I got to get this done. I'm accountable for so much. I need to control the trial. We can't take away the placebo. Help me out here, but I don't have a lot of time for this. But some of these breast cancer advocates had actually been schooled by ACT UP. and they were not going to go away silently. They demanded a true seat at the table. What does that mean? They wanted to be involved in protocol development, actually attend meetings with the FDA, truly participate as partners in this. Again, not my first recommendation. I was very, very skeptical about this, but here's what I learned. The placebo, together with the patient advocates, we went to FDA, removed the placebo, enrolled the trial, and maintained the integrity of the trial. Expanded access, together with the patient advocates, we put in place a lottery for the limited supply that went up in the patients who could have access to the drug as we had more drug supply. Specifically and very clearly, I found that some things happened, important, transformative efforts happened only because these patient advocates and patients had a seat at the table. And it was a lot more fun, more fulfilling, more meaningful, because that voice of the patient entered my life and my challenges. So you might say, okay, now, Sue, you're living in an ivory tower. Now that you're chancellor, you have this big dreamy vision. Just get patients involved and everything will be easier. But medicine is serious business. Let me tell you what I'm not saying. If anyone in this audience or who's watching this online needs brain surgery, has an emergency, needs treatment right away, there's not time for a consult with the patient. Other than informed consent and doing the things you need to do to involve the patient, that's very limited. But I would submit things that are most important for us today: wellness, prevention. What about treatment and therapy for chronic illnesses? These are perfect situations where patients and healthcare consumers can get involved and help doctors. So maybe the answer is mobile. There's been a lot at this Tedmed about mobile, devices, digital. If we digitize everything, if I just monitor my blood pressure, pulse, use my Fitbit, everything will be solved. Well, one of the questions I would ask is that information we're monitoring connecting to my doctor? Does my doctor know what I now know? And do I expect that interaction with my doctor to occur in some vacuum where he or she doesn't actually know what I'm monitoring? We need to push ourselves to ask, how does mobile monitoring become more than a toy or something interesting? How does it connect to how I'm cared for by my caregiver? I thought, like possibly many of you, that electronic health records would be transformative. Everything would change. Again, back to that doctor-patient relationship. If healthcare records becoming electronic means your caregiver, in fact, turns their back on you, is more disconnected from the patients, and if patients don't have access to the content in those electronic health records, the risk is that what could be a wonderful tool and a major advance could again bring patients further away from their caregivers. Not what we want with the use of technology. But I do think mobile, digital, electronic health records are wonderful new tools that we can use, but asking ourselves, how do we bring the healthcare consumer closer to and in partnership with their caregivers, the doctors? So 2 years ago, I participated in an effort that was really fantastic. Again, like all people who love innovation, like this audience, I started off by thinking, we have all these great new innovations: low-cost sequencing, genomics, proteomics, metabolomics. We have unprecedented ways of connecting big data and science to where patients are. And so I co-chaired the National Academy's report towards precision medicine. Could we make a Google Map for health, a more flexible, dynamic system that connects patients and their caregivers in fundamentally new ways? Our dream was that this would mean a totally different engagement between patients as central participants and their doctors, and that we would need decision support tools so that this new knowledge could be brought to caregivers at the point of clinical care to totally transform that connection between doctors and their patients. This is an exciting vision, a transformative vision, and in this last 2 years, I've spent enormous amounts of time and energy looking carefully at how can we make this real. It's so exciting that all of us want this for ourselves, our families, our health care. But here's the thing. I really moved from thinking that, in fact, we need to engage the patients. As I mentioned before, patients need a seat at the table as we talk about this transformative vision of bringing all these omics to bear at the point of clinical care. We need to go further than a seat at the table. My belief today is that this vision will not happen if it's not driven by healthcare consumers. Not embraced, not accepted, not tolerated, but driven by patients. We need a new social contract, and that new social contract is I'm donating my data, my information. I am supplying that to this big data for the greater good, my family's good, my own good. And in return, that will enable my doctor, the healthcare system, to help me and my family. That new social contract must be driven by consumers. So, suggestions. Again, my journey, like all of your journeys, informs how I think about this, and I would make 5 observations. That power of consumers. I use the term consumers rather than patients for this talk because I wanted to talk about the power we all have as consumers. Think about efforts that consumers have taken on in so many areas of life, from journalism to purchasing things these days. There's enormous power. Don't underestimate people. We often in medicine say, well, you know, that person wasn't trained. They don't have the knowledge. They could do something that could cause trouble. Don't underestimate people. They constantly exceed expectations. Enable the environment. If we put more tools, and every time we put a new tool, there's a new rule, we won't advance. We must, again, engage the consumer community, all of us together, in asking the question, why do we have that rule? Who are we helping? What's the downside of that rule? Legal constraints and privacy constraints are important to protect patients. If they limit what's possible for patients, we should challenge them. We need to prepare for messiness. Now you might be saying, okay, now she's gone too far. She's talking about health, and she used the word messiness. Well, another of my lessons learned in working with patients, they actually have a variety of opinions. There's not a point estimate on what a group of patients think, nor should there be, nor should we force that or seek that out. The messiness is when you get hundreds, thousands, millions of voices, they're not all the same. And there's great richness in that. I'll give us an example, end-of-life care. We don't all believe the same thing about what we want towards the end of our life. That messiness is a terrific asset. Provide incentives. Why should I help my doctor? Why should I help the healthcare system? What has it done for me? We need to provide incentives, and they can't be, you'll prevent some illness 20 years from now. That's not a sustainable incentive. That doesn't capture my attention today or tomorrow. But with changes in healthcare, co-pays, transparency, we have more tools for incentives than ever before. And finally, I've been talking about consumers, patients, individuals. The most exciting thing of all is to be able to tap into social connections. We all know that the people who are around us or who we associate with drive our behavior. That can be incredibly powerful. So we need to tap into families, communities, schools, churches, social networks, not only consumers, but populations. That is going to be the transformative part of engaging consumers, patients, populations. I want to end my comments with something from the Hippocratic Oath. And I do so with some irony. For those of you who know the Hippocratic Oath that physicians take, it originally, in the Hippocratic tradition, taught physicians to exercise authority over obedient patients. Who in this audience is obedient? Me neither. The modern Hippocratic Oath, though, has a final line that I love. May I always act so as to preserve the finest traditions of my calling, and may I long experience the joy of healing those who seek my help. If we engage healthcare consumers, patients, populations together with us as doctors, we will absolutely long experience the joy of healing those who seek my help. Thank you very much.